Welcome back to another episode of the Weekday Saints podcast. LaQuisha, great to be with you again.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we are super excited for this episode. We have an amazing person that we had a chance to interview, Dr. Crystal Sorrells, homegrown Chattanoogan, doing amazing work in our city.
Listen, we actually share a testimony because we both come from this lineage of teachers, and we ran away from it. When Dr. Sorrell says that this was her legacy, but that this was not her desired path, but yet it's where she landed, I was hooked.
Yeah, and just really neat to hear her heart for the work she's doing, that it's really about caring for those students and leading her team and all the things. And there's some challenging things she has to deal with over there, but we're so thankful that, one, that she's in our community doing this work, and two, that you get to hear this episode. So stay tuned for this episode with Crystal Sorrells.
We are here with one of Chattanooga's premier principal educators. I think you're decorated, award-winning on multiple levels. I'm gonna boost you up because I think you are an amazing instructional leader. You're an amazing educator. You're an amazing person, amazing woman. And we are so blessed to have Dr. Crystal Sorrells with us today.
Thank you so much just for the invitation.
Well, thank you for accepting.
Honored to be here. Honored to be here.
Now, I don't know who doesn't know you. If they're in this city, you've been in multiple roles with our school system, and so we've seen you all over. But tell people who you are. Where are you from?
I think if people don't know me, they know my mother and my father. I'm a kid of Chattanooga, born and raised right here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. A proud graduate of Brainerd High School, class of 1994, Miss Brainerd High School, and excited to be back as the executive principal there. I've also served as an assistant principal at Brainerd throughout my time coming back to Chattanooga, but played basketball, volleyball, track, sung in the choir, modeled with the teen review, all things Brainerd High School. But if you don't know me, you know Calvin and Ramel, and they are truly the rock stars of the family for sure. They are the rocks that kind of brought our family to where we are in this space right now. Both educators here in Chattanooga. My father retired from Brainerd. My mom is a retired principal. She retired from Bestie Shepherd Elementary. So it's interesting to hear all of the generational stories. If I have students now, they actually had their parents or they went to school with their grandparents. So our families have been connected in education for several decades.
Yeah, Miss Ramel was one of the very first educators I've ever met when I moved to Chattanooga in 2003. And there was this standard. There was this almost a regalness of Black female principal leaders and educators in Hamilton County, and she was definitely at that top.
She is that human, and I am not like her.
I beg to differ.
I try to be, though. I try to be. She is definitely a dynamic leader for other leaders to learn from and to glean from.
Well, how cool that just the history and the legacy that you're carrying on in this city.
So the truth be told, I try my very best to avoid it.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
So my mother and father are educators. My brother was an educator. Both of my sisters, they're all older. My dad had 3 children. I'm my mom's only child, but we all were in education. We all had different pathways. But Dad's words were, you can do whatever you want. Just get your teaching license because you'll always have a job. So if you want to be an artist, my brother was an artist.
Wow.
Go for it. My sister has her Juris Doctorate. She wanted to be an attorney. Great. I went to school for 3 years as a physical therapy major. And it wasn't until that 3rd year at Florida A&M University that I finally decided to change my major. I tried everything to avoid it. So I was that kid growing up all through the summer times when my mom was at school. I was sitting in her classroom at Highland Park Elementary, that's now the Montessori school, and decorating bulletin boards and cutting out letters. That was before we had the machines to do all of those things, and hated it. But I was a perfectionist too. So my goal, I would sit there and do all of these things, and Mom would be, oh, that's so nice. And she'd go and take it all down and do it at her standard. And my goal was to make sure I did it well enough for her to keep it up in her classroom or to leave the bulletin board as it was when I finished it. So I got a lot of that sort of perfectionism from working really hard to make sure my work could stay up and she didn't have to redo it. But I tried my very best to avoid this. I was an engineering major. I was a physical therapy major. I went through all of the things.
So what changed?
Oh,
What was the spark?
so I went to Florida A&M University as a basketball scholarship, and I learned very quickly that basketball was not my life.
Mm.
I enjoyed playing, but I didn't want to devote my life to it. There was too much FAMU to do
Mm.
to just be able to play basketball, and so um, my dad was very clear: you can go to college, but I'm not paying out of state tuition. You can go to school for free here in Tennessee. I was like, absolutely not. I am going to FAMU, the marching 100. That's where I want to be. So every summer I would come home and I would work 3 jobs. I would substitute teach until the school year ended. When the school year ended, I would go to Eastdale Recreation Center with Dank Hawkins every single summer. And every single day, 7 days a week, I'd work at the Eckards on Brainerd Road from 5 to midnight. That's what I did all summer. I didn't need to do anything else. And of course, my auntie, who was also a former educator, rest her soul, she would give me a little bit on top to make sure I had everything I needed to pay my out-of-state tuition so I could head back to FAMU.
Wow.
And the last summer I did that, that was when, if you were a substitute teacher, they would call you on the phone and say, "Hey, do you want to go to this school today?" And I remember whoever was calling, they called and they talked to my mom and was like, "Well, we have 2 positions. We have a position at Howard Elementary. I don't know if Crystal wants to go there. We have a position somewhere else outside of the city." I was like, "Mom, I don't know where that is. I know where Howard is. I can get there on the highway. That's where I'll go." And so when I went, of course, they kept me till the end of the school year, but I was a teacher assistant in Karen Hollis's classroom.
Oh, wow.
And I fell in love. I learned 2 things. I do not want to have anything to do with kindergarten because that's where we were. Absolutely never want to do that again. And then I absolutely had to change my major. So I was with Karen Hollis. Full circle, I interviewed here in Chattanooga. Guess who's sitting there on the interview team? Karen Hollis.
We have that in common. Guess who my first assistant principal when I came here working at Hardy Elementary?
Karen
Hollis.
That's amazing.
And she's sitting in the interview and you see these tears rolling down her face. And I'm trying my best not to look at her like, come on now, this is serious. Don't look at her. I can't look at Karen. But she was just so thrilled and excited. So I was interviewing for an administrative role here in Chattanooga and she was on the interview team. And she is probably the reason I went ahead and changed my major, being in her kindergarten Montessori class. Had a ball. The most fun I had ever had. But not interested in seeing kindergarten anymore. They were a little bit too small for me.
Well, talk about it sounds like a lot of your professional life has been in the administrative roles in education. What would you say is the biggest difference for those that aren't in that space between being that teacher in the classroom and the role that you play for the school?
There's only one thing that got me into the administrative role, and that was the cost of living. I absolutely could not afford to be a classroom teacher. If they could pay me to be a classroom teacher, what they pay me to be an administrator, I'd still be teaching mathematics right now. That is the most fun you will ever have. Every day with students, watching them have their aha moments, watching them do the goofy things that children do. And I taught all of my teaching experiences in middle school. So middle grades are a hilarious time for kids. That was the most fun I would ever have. That's when I was coaching basketball and really enjoying engaging every day. But at the same time, I had 7 supplements that I had to work to be able to maintain an apartment and a car in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was just too much. And I was able to give all that up for one salary to be an administrator. And so I had to make that decision.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So what do you love the most about the work that you get to do?
So if you were ever to ask my dad would say, "I don't understand how you got into education. You didn't even like children." It's not important. I mean, they're cool. It's not important. They're cool. But what I love, what really excites me about education is the art and science of teaching. I love to see people, humans, get it. It started with children, and you would see their eyes light up like, "Oh, I got it." It's something about that moment that is just magical that you just can't create anywhere else, that I was able to help them get it, and they're excited about it. And so now I'm learning to really appreciate doing that with adults who are learning to be leaders or learning to be teachers, just to see that aha moment, that love for learning, that that excitement when you get it and you're confident in what you've now understood, and then you can go and take that and replicate it with someone else. I love that piece about it more than anything else.
Yeah. I always
That
call it the
light,
light bulb
those
moment.
light bulb
You can
moments.
almost visibly see it.
You can see it happen, and with middle school kids, they'll be sitting there, they'll be silent and they'll work, and then all of a sudden, I got it, and they'll jump up and just get so thrilled that they finally got it, and I that is the moment right there.
What does that look like for the adults you work with?
For adults, it's very similar, but they come running back to say, "Oh, I tried this and it didn't work, and so I did this," or "I tried this and it worked, and so I did this." And they have just as much enthusiasm and excitement. They don't jump up and down as much, but to see the joy on a teacher's face that they were able to accomplish something that they've been working on, or a lesson went really, really well because you gave them some feedback that was useful, or when you go into a classroom and you see the evidence of the feedback that you gave, that's the same feeling. It's really exciting. I remember sitting with a teacher, even as an executive principal, and helping her to arrange her desk in a way that would facilitate learning in her space. And to come back to the classroom and see that she had done it and she was excited about it and it worked, and you see students being far more productive in the space, those are the moments you live for as an educator.
I've seen your career from the outskirts. This sounds like a stalker journey, right? But I've watched your career up in awe, because I've watched you go from some very different schools. Like, you've worked at very different schools, many of them where you've been tasked with the challenge of either growing populations, multiple, like, we have so many ethnic differences in our school. I remember when you were at East Ridge, and so there were like, what, 80 or something like that. It's some ridiculous high number of representation languages in that one school,
in the one building.
right? Going to Tyner, right, at the time where there's all this, kind of community input and what Tyner is going to become. And, now you're at Brainerd. And so talk to us a little bit about navigating those challenges, like what God has gifted you with, because I've seen you do it with a grace that I know is divine.
It has to be. I don't think there's any other way to walk through and navigate this space without the love and the protection and the divine direction that God, I believe, has on my life. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to put into words just how good God has been to me through this journey, because I've seen some other individuals go through this journey, and it's done damage, physically, mentally, spiritually, and for the most part, moving through it, it was all pretty cool. I just can't complain about it. When it was my turn, and I think that's how I looked at it. It was my turn to go through some heavy waters, and to go through some challenges, and to go through some bumps along the road of this journey. And having been in education for 26 years, and that's the one real thing that I can talk about that was a genuine challenge. Um, it's nothing but God's grace and mercy, and to be able to come on the other side of it and still be standing is all God gets all the glory for that. And I think it would be selfish of me not to stand gracefully through it, because that's what I would expect or want to support someone else to be able to do. And I think sometimes you do have to go through those things so that you can then be a better support for others who are experiencing and facing some things, and they look and say, well, hey, how did you do that?
That's right.
And now I can speak from it from a more authentic space. I know what it could be like, but until that time when you have to go through that storm and almost all the world is watching you. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
It felt like the world is watching you go through this storm, and knowing that in this day and age, and the realities of social media, anything that you say or do, or how you express yourself, or too much emotion, not enough emotion, is being watched and critiqued. So you just have to be mindful of it and walk through it. And I know I wasn't walking alone. So
Yeah.
I know that there were people who were praying for me who didn't even know me, because they had watched or seen or been a part of or experienced somewhere along the journey. And I think everything that has happened up to this point is what kind of got me to this place where I was able to accept the challenge, accept the reality of what I was walking through, and hold my head up and know that after you've done all you can,
Stand.
you just stand.
Yes.
And I was able to stand knowing that God covered me and protected me and walked with me, and others could see it too. And
Yes.
that's what made it even more beautiful to come through, to know that other people saw that during that time.
Yeah, you answered the question I was gonna ask. It's just we oftentimes will talk about how it's all God's grace. I
Yeah.
gotta trust in God's grace, but what does that actually mean?
What does it mean?
And you
What does it
just
feel like? And again, sometimes it's hard to describe, but
yeah.
to know that this is probably the lowest I've ever been in my 26 years of a career, to get to that place and still be able to smile and get up and walk and see people and still connect and be okay is just how good God is.
Yes.
That you can just be okay. And it doesn't matter what you go through. It doesn't matter what you experience. It doesn't matter what other people say. When you know that you know and you're okay with that, nothing else really matters.
I heard you say a few times the people that walked alongside of you. I know sometimes in my life, especially those hard moments, there's things I need people to say over me that I either my mind can't get to the truths about who God is, to remind me of those, just to keep standing.
Yeah.
See about was it Moses holding up his arms, and those that were on either side heaping his arms up, that we need those brothers and sisters to do that, that we don't walk this journey alone. And we're starting to get into this, that your faith is really important to you.
It is.
Have you been a believer your entire life, or when did you come to know Jesus?
So I grew up in church. My mom and dad always attended different churches growing up. Hilarious to me now. My mom attended Phillips Temple CME Church. That was at the corner of Vine and Palmetto, right downtown.
Yeah.
And my dad attended Greater Tucker Missionary Baptist
Yep.
Church. That was right on Macaulay Avenue. Both in walking distance in those locations. Both churches moved to Northmore Road right now in walking distance from both locations. So those two churches have been a part of my life my entire life. Grew up with, in my dad's words, you need to go to church with your mom. And I did. And so I kind of was in a CME world most of the time. That was interesting, but I was there with my mom. I remember walking up at the age of 18 and accepting Christ for myself when I knew and understood what that relationship was for me personally. Fast forward all of these years later, I am now currently a member of Greater Tucker Missionary Baptist Church. And it was so hilarious that I came home in 2009, of course, went to church with my mom, because that's what you're supposed to do, and stayed as long as I could. And I tried several different churches throughout the city, just trying to find that space where I could be comfortable in my faith, where I could gain something from the experience. I was in a place where I needed to be fed personally myself. I needed to get something from it. And being in spaces where there are not many individuals in your age range, and it might be a little too young or it might be a little too old, either way, and not gaining the most from the experience. But what I have always loved of Greater Tucker Missionary Baptist Church is their church choir. And so to join that church and be a member of that church choir, it was like the best feeling. I don't know that they realize how much they have motivated me and inspired me all of my life, because I've watched this choir from the audience.
Wow.
And I've watched them with 50 or 60 people in a church choir and love the sound and their appreciation for music, but also their ministry. And so to be a part of that now makes me very excited.
Now,
Don't you
isn't
do-
Greater Tucker? I'm not gonna ask you
Okay.
to sing. I want to ask you to sing, but isn't Greater Tucker Baptist? Isn't that across the street from
It's
Greater?
right across the street from Brainerd High School. Ha ha ha. They are one of our greatest partners.
Wow.
In
That's
walking
amazing.
distance. I can walk across the street. But they have
That probably comes in
support.
handy sometimes.
It does. And when I say they are partners in this work, they genuinely are. Their doors are open to us as a school community, to do activities for our students, for our parents, and of course to feed me personally. I love our students have attended. They're members there who attend Greater Tucker. And when we have activities, they're very supportive. Our students attend on Sundays, and it's a great family experience.
What, the thing about principals, the best principal, right, may not be. People think that principals like sit in this office and they're like the untouchable. But I've gone to so many schools, whatever level, where the principal, a good principal, is nowhere to be found.
Nowhere to
They're there,
Uh-huh.
but you can't find them
We
because
exist. We're in there.
they're in the crevices doing the work. What is it that you would hope that people could come to know about your job that maybe they don't know about the work you do?
This is sometimes tough work, and it's sometimes very isolating work, because sometimes you do have to
Yeah.
place yourself in that office. Sometimes you do have to get the work done that's not in the hallways, that's not directly connected to students. But the most exciting part of the work is genuinely being in classrooms, making connections with students, being able to have conversations with students, getting to know students in a way that you can then anticipate some of their needs and some of their expectations. You can help them learn how to navigate some of the waters for themselves. That's the best part of the work. It's kind of what keeps me away from central office, because I feel this as an executive principal. That's what I feel of central office. Those are the untouchables, and you can't necessarily get close to there. And I think the work of education is being in someone's building, being around children. Even as we go to meetings and things and we're in other buildings, it doesn't matter whose building. You just want to be in classrooms and spaces with children, watching them learn and watching them get excited about learning and watching them gain more knowledge. That's the best part of this work. Um, Anything that forces me back into the office to do work is not the most exciting part of the work. Just being in the presence of kids and learning is what the work really is about. That's where it is.
So there's a challenge going on social media right now where, and I've seen principals do it, I've seen pastors do it, where their members or their students are like standing behind them
And say
and
their
they say their
names.
name, and the administrator or the pastor has to say who the
Who that
individual
is.
Oh my
do,
goodness.
do you have that level of rapport with your students?
I would hope I did, but that gets harder and harder and harder. I will tell you the most
Imagine.
I think I was better at it a few years ago. COVID and the isolation of a global pandemic took a lot of those elements away. And so trying to rebuild that now, there are some who I can hear them in the hallway, and from my office, I can say, so and so, why do I hear you in the hallway? How did you know it was me? And those things happen pretty organically. Unfortunately, the ones you know that well
You know
are
that
the
well.
ones you know that well, and you've seen them a lot more, and you've had to deal with them a lot more, and you've had to interact with them a lot more, when you would hope that you were doing that with every student. But sometimes there's some who need your
Yeah.
attention.
I was in college administration work, and I always said, I knew you if you were a knucklehead or a leader. If you were right down the road, I didn't know you too well, but
That's the hard part. That's the hard part.
I told you before we started filming that my father was a headmaster my whole life. He's principal, started the schools, and I think it's such a unique role. You are not the person in the same classroom every day with the same students. You're bouncing around, but you are such a vital role to those teachers. I was a teacher my first year after college, and I did not have a principal who ever walked in my classroom one time, and it was the most lonely experience. One, am I doing a good job? Two, who am I supposed to go to when I have an issue to advocate for me? And so the role you get to play, and love hearing your hands-on approach, is that what you're doing is you're advocating for those teachers and those students
Right.
to the untouchable place up there, right?
Right.
Where things can be changed. And I don't know how you feel about sitting in that gap there that can feel oftentimes lonely. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
I think you have to intentionally find ways not to be isolated. The work in and of itself can be, because there are some things that I can't discuss. There are a lot of things I can't discuss with other people, and I can't have a lot of genuine conversations about specifics sometimes in a lot of those instances. But you have to be intentional about making yourself block off your schedule and get away. And I think I'm blessed in the fact that I have a secretary who has been with me now for almost 10 years in 3 different school buildings, who understands how important it is for me not to be confined. And she does an incredible job of managing that space and time. And let me talk to you. I can probably get the answer faster than you can get to Dr. Sorrells, or I can answer the question if you let me know what's going on. And so when people do call and they do show up, they understand, and she understands, and she is a master at being able to mediate situations so I don't have to stop or pull away if it's unless it's an emergency for sure. But you have to be intentional about that. If you allow things to just come in and stop that schedule, you'll look up and the entire day will be gone.
Right.
And it's everything but what you were tasked to do for the day, and it's kept you out of classrooms. Today was one of those unique days where we're out of the building. We're in principal's meeting. So I had all of 2 hours to get into the building. In the first place I wanted to go was the cafeteria to see who was coming in for lunch, what they were having for lunch, because that's one of the best places to kind of connect with kids. And if they haven't seen me all day, they need to know that I'm here.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't see me in announcements, so it's not uncommon for me to use my app to call into the building just so they can hear that I'm around
Right.
and
Love it.
and know that there's a connection there. They want to hear that voice and know.
So if I was to walk into a Dr. Sorrells led school, what would be some of the characteristics that you would hope that I would see? And how does your faith kind of inform some of the vision and direction you want to see in a school that you were over?
That is an incredible question, and I would have to go back to my very first principalship at Orchard Knob Middle School. Um, it's amazing. I had my biggest fight with my dad when I was named to Orchard Knob Middle School, and he was furious. I can't believe they would put 2 females at Orchard Knob Middle School. I was like, "Are you saying I can't do my job because I'm a female?" I mean, it went there, and then I was like, "Oh my God, what did I just say to my dad?" Wait a minute. Let's back up a minute because that had never happened. But on the first day of registration, a grandmother walked up to me and she said, "Baby, I want to pray with you in the middle of the atrium at Orchard Knob Middle School on registration day." And she said, "I know what you did when you came here because I can already feel it." I was like, "Yes, ma'am. What is it?" She said, "You brought God in here with you."
Hmm.
And that has stuck with me since my very first year being a school leader, that I recognize and understand the separation of church and state, but I would hope that when you come into a building, you know that I'm not here by myself, that you sense and you can feel what's here innately with me. I don't have to say it out loud, but God is with me all the time. You should be able to see it and feel it when you walk into a building. And that particular grandmother stood there on my first year principal, never done this work, and she prayed in the middle of the atrium. She goes to the grocery store that very same day, and of course, my mom, being the educator she is, she sees a kid and it's like, "Hey, little boy, you had registration today. How was it?" And he was like, "Huh, it was okay. I'm going to a new school and I don't really want to go." And my mom was like, "Well, what school are you going?" She has no idea any of this conversation has taken place. "What school are you going to?" He says, "Orchard Knob Middle School." She said, "Well, I can tell you right now, I know the principal there, and she's gonna do everything she can to make sure you." He was like, "You know her?" "Yeah, I birthed her." "What?" And so my mom is in the grocery store talking to this child, and she tells the name, and it is the grandmother who just that morning prayed with me in the atrium of Orchard Knob Middle School. How that happens,
That's
I do
amazing.
not know. But
But
one
God.
way,
But God.
but God.
I love that.
And she connected with Cornelius. Hey, Cornelius. And he's a graduate now doing amazing things in the city, but his grandmother said that to me, and that really stuck with me. And so I hope when people go into any building where I've been, wherever I'm working, that they can sense that.
Yeah.
And people will say, "Oh, there's a vibe in here." Or one of my new teachers said, "Yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid. There's something, there's a secret sauce to it. I don't know. One day I'm gonna package it up and I'm gonna sell it and I'm gonna retire." But that's been kind of the feeling that I've gotten at each school. Just
Yeah.
take that with you wherever you go. Be good to people. Do the very best you can for people. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Old school home training. That's just kind of what I take, and hopefully people can see that and sense that.
Yeah, I love that you're saying it was sensed, not like you spoke it.
No.
Yeah, even in the Bible when it talks about that we should be the sweet fragrance of Christ, like something that we smell,
Yes.
Yes.
that we
like
smell of
it.
Christ. That like oftentimes it's not even with the words we use. It's how
It's just
people
how
sense
you
it.
show up
That's a
every
great
day
example of that.
and have that sense. We had a situation on Friday. I'm sure it's been on the news. And there was this call that came into our main office, random call. We thought it was a threat to the school, but on the call, the caller talked about being in the locker room and wanting to do harm. So immediately we lock down, we go to the locker room, we do follow the protocol, go through the steps, we secure the students, whatever, and we do come across a firearm in that locker room. We have had every investigator and every detective in that building. They have had forensics to test phones. They have tracked a phone back to a student by the IP address, by the address, by the parent, by the phone company, all of this information, and there is no evidence that this student used this phone. And so on Friday, we were scheduled for testing. There was a field test that the state of Tennessee is doing. So ninth and 10th graders were preparing for testing. This is a ninth grade student. Her phone was not even on her person. It was put away in a bag in an assistant principal's office. And so regardless of what these detectives have found, how they led back to this random cell phone that belonged to this young lady who has no clue what's going on. I truly believe that phone call was our call because it took us right where we needed to be,
Yeah.
and we didn't know that we needed to be there. And this baby girl did not have that phone, regardless of the phone number that came up on the caller ID, regardless of what the detectives have said. She didn't even have the phone on her person. It was locked up, and we know it was locked up.
Wow.
But we ended up where we needed to be.
Yeah.
And I just think that's what we take with us into the building. And you have to be okay and trust that you're going to have that type of direction, that level of comfort and courage in the midst of situations like that, that there is someone who's watching over us to take care of us through those things. And we still don't know who made that phone call, because regardless of what the numbers were,
It's not
we
accurate.
Yeah, that's
we are
wild.
positive she didn't do that. And so some kind of way that call got us to where we needed to be.
Wow.
And as much as we have identified it as a threat, was it really a threat? It really could have been a blessing that sent us to something that we didn't know we were even looking for.
There's a sense of a lot of your job is very reactionary to what comes up, but there's a lot of intentional work, even in your prayer life, that's gone ahead of you, and that's just such a great example that the Spirit's working.
I think it's the prayer life of others too.
Yeah.
Because so often people will tell me, or they'll see me in a grocery store, or they'll just send me a random message, and I was praying for you. I called you by name, and I call your school by name, and I'm praying for the things that you do. I know people that are doing that, and they don't even know me. So I am so very grateful that anyone would even think to call my name in a prayer. But I know it is powerful. Those things are powerful, and they keep us protected, and they keep us grounded in this work, because it's very easy to get caught up in the noise and the distractions, and it's very easy to want to step back and not do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so to be able to stay in it and stay the course, because there's a calling on it. This is what I have decided or claimed. This is my ministry. This is what I do to serve the Lord. I'm going out and serving other people, and I'm okay with that. And I enjoy it and I love it. So
Is there a particular scripture or Bible story that's kind of like your linchpin that you go to?
So first, immediately, I find myself always going to John 3:16. I think it's an automatic. I think that's what's hardwired. It might have been the first verse I probably ever learned. But as an adult, learning what that actually means and thinking of it from a parent's perspective, what that says, that you would be willing to give your very own for someone else's sin sick life and world, what that means, and what that means for a parent to make that decision. Sometimes I have sort of my own internal interpretation of Joshua 1:9, and the way I read it, it said, "Girl, for real." Like, I've already explained to you what your courage is, and I've already explained to you how strong you are. And why are you worried? Why are you afraid? Why are you dismayed? Because I'm with you and I got you. That's the way I read it. That's what
I like your
that's what I heard.
That's a good
That was what I heard. So, in some of those times, that's kind of what has walked with me. That's kind of what I reference to. A lot of the messages I feel like I receive from music. So I love music. the Blood Melody with Kathy Taylor and Windsor Village it's kind of on repeat right now for whatever reason. But that's
The blood covers.
it covers, it protects,
Yeah.
it never loses its power. So that's kind of what I lean on a lot.
That's awesome. John 3:16 is a beautiful verse too, where it talks about at the beginning where it says, "For God so loved the world." He was already loving the world before he sent
Before he even did
right?
it.
That he's got this world, and in a lot of chances, you praying over those students before they even show up in the classroom is it's caring for them before you even know them because of who they are in Christ and who they are because of what Christ has done. And so, anyway, thanks for your
And
service
who they'll become.
Yeah.
Based on what you do
Oh.
and what you give to them and what efforts you put forth.
Yes.
You are molding the future of your city, of your world, and if you don't get it right, a lot of people are going to be impacted.
Yeah.
Man.
This has been wonderful.
It's a bit amazing conversation. I'm motivated by listening. I knew Crystal before this interview, but
We go way back.
to just see God's fingerprints. I don't know that every student, every family, every community that you've been able to go in as a principal leader or as even as an assistant principal knows the impact that God has made on your life and therefore indirectly is making on their life. So we're glad to be able to share just a little bit of your story.
Thank you for allowing me to share that. I don't know that I've been asked to share that. I feel as though I've arrived. This is my first podcast. So thank you. This is amazing. Yes, this is amazing.
It won't be the last. That's for sure. Yeah.
This is incredible.
Well, isn't that so? That's symbolic. We're going to close on that note because the symbolism for you is to know that your first podcast experience did not ask you as a school official to not talk about Jesus. We want you we christened you into the airwaves of podcasts with God at the forefront.
God at the front.
And so we thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Man, LaQuisha, Crystal's an amazing person.
She is, with a beautiful heart. She spoke so passionately about seeing the light bulbs come on, the aha moments for students, and that being a motivator for her. I think that makes sense why she's not in the class or in her office, but in the classes and in the hallways.
Yeah, and I love that. That piece for me was massive. Is as a leader, what's it mean not just to be making decisions behind the desk, but to be out being embodied in the hallways and with the students where they know her. It makes me think about our Lord and Savior, like the thing about Jesus that makes him such a approachable Savior is that he didn't just sit in heaven to save us, but he came to be with us, like his embodiment here. And so as leaders, I think we're called to model that in how we lead others. And she was such a great example of that.
Listen, it was a blessing to me to hear. I worked in the school system, so I understand the passion of seeing those faces, to see the transformation that you're making. She is literally a light in our city with our young people.
Wow. Well, I hope it was an encouragement to you like it was to us. Stay tuned for more episodes of Weekday Saints Podcast coming soon.